And there are times in this show where Matt Murdock does some really great legal things. And this is the worst set of legal that I've seen almost on any show, almost ever, on any movie, any TV show ever.
We are on the road to Spider-Man Brand New Day, and we've got one last stop before we get there. This is Doug Defends Legal Brief, the show where a real lawyer talks about an issue from one of your favorite movies or TV shows. I am Billy Business, and next to me is our real attorney, Mr. Doug Ridley.
And I can see.
You can see. That's right. Let me do your intro again. Here's our ablest attorney, Mr. Doug Ridley.
I remember when they announced Daredevil, I was like, you know what? I got over Matt Murdock. Eyes.
I mean, his eyes kind of work. They're radar-y.
Yeah, it's true. He doesn't need eyes.
I think he may have a few things over you. I don't know.
He's devastatingly handsome as well. So there's that.
But on the way to Spider-Man Brand New Day, I was kind of surprised, but Frank Castle, John Bernthal, is going to be part of Spider-Man Brand New Day along with the Hulk, a lot of others. So today we are talking about, Doug, I'm going to say this in a dad joke. We both have daughters. What do you do when your daughter misbehaves?
I don't know.
Punisher. We are talking about Marvel's Punisher, but more specifically, we are talking about Punisher, his first entrance into MCU proper. Kinda. Do the Netflix ones still count?
You know, it's unclear. I mean, because now we've got Daredevil Born Again.
Sure.
You know, it assumes the Daredevil universe for a bit, and we had Jessica Jones recently. So I think that they're generally folding that in. I think what makes this Punisher interesting, specifically John Bernthal's Frank Castle, is that we do get more of his motivation and the loss of his family and the PTSD that he has from being in war. And so those aspects of Frank Castle are actually what are the almost only real valid legal thing that happens in the trial of Frank Castle in the Daredevil show. I have been dying to do this analysis since we started doing the show a year ago, because there is not a show that I like more, that I have been more angry with about the horrible, horrible, horrible courtroom scenes and the way Matt Murdock is a lawyer in this show. Marvel, Foggy, all of you, hire a lawyer to be a consultant before you film courtroom scenes. It doesn't work that way. And I know you got to clip it for, your audiences and all those things. Hire a lawyer. I will do it for free. You have it on tape. I will do it for free, but don't film another courtroom drama without talking to a real lawyer. It doesn't work that way, and oh my God, it drives me crazy.
So specifically, we're going to be talking about the Punisher's story arc in season 2 of Netflix's, now Disney Plus's Daredevil. And his entrance. If you're totally not aware of this character or whatever, the gist of it is he was, I think, a Marine. Yeah, he was a Marine. Family is killed, his wife and his son. He exacts his revenge on all the cartels, the mobsters, anyone basically who's bad. Frank is going after them because he does suffer incredible PTSD after what was done to him and his family. Now, Daredevil at this point brings Punisher to justice, gets him arrested. And then Matt Murdock, who is Daredevil, is going to be his lawyer.
It's actually not a bad business plan if you think about it. I mean,
deceptive business plan.
I'm out there pretty regularly at nights busting criminals so that I can have them pay me a bunch of money the next day to go. Now, the difference here is that Frank Castle doesn't have any money. So, there's not like there was money for Nelson and Murdock, and they complain about that incessantly on the show as well. But having said that, it's a little bit of an ethical problem.
I mean, and this is a trial in a case where we're not haggling over did he do this. Like the evidence is like overwhelming.
Right.
That he is a vigilante killer.
Yep.
So let's start with, well, you know what? I'm usually the host of this show, but I'm going to kind of let you walk us through where we go on this. So the trial starts, and Matt Murdock is maybe not as present as he should be.
You know, that's one way of saying it. The other way of saying it is he commits absolute horrible, blatant malpractice on a regular basis because he's out screwing around with Elektra instead of actually being in court when he's in trial. Now, the drama in the show, the friendship between Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson is one of the really nicely developed aspects of this season even. And Matt just leaves him hanging. Like, literally, Foggy has to get up and deliver opening statements because Matt no shows, no calls for court. And the idea of doing that, especially, I mean, on any case, on a drug possession case, on a DUI case, if there's a trial, and you don't show up for, you know, when your partner expects you, that's really one of the worst things that a criminal defense attorney can do is no show for court. And then it's not just a no-show for court, it's a no-show for the murder trial of the century.
Right.
That Foggy was afraid to take, didn't want to take, Matt convinced him to take, and then he no-shows. And so there's another character, Karen Page, who's their paralegal/secretary, who helps and develops a nice rapport with Frank. And so she's doing interviews and things, and that's legally what we would expect to see. One of the biggest problems that I have, and in almost every show where there's a trial, where there's lawyer stuff. I mean, Law and Order solved a crime and got you to the end of the trial in an hour. You know, I mean, that was the series that went on for forever.
Still on.
but in this show, they specifically say, well, he's not waiving his right to a speedy trial, and the prosecution's pushing for a fast trial, so we're going in 2 weeks. No. That's not how that works.
Okay.
You don't do a murder trial in 2 weeks. You don't start with charges and then go for 2 weeks. Maybe several months. And that assumes that everyone's cooperative and everyone is pushing for the fastest thing possible. Now, we know, in this case, Frank Castle is pushing for a fast trial. And we know that he has reasons behind that. Because and that gets developed in a little bit.
We'll get there.
But we know that he's pushing for a trial. We know that the prosecution wants to push for a trial. But the prosecution doesn't get to do that. It's just completely false. So if I, as a defense attorney, come in and say, I'm not ready for a murder trial in 2 weeks. We haven't tested all the evidence. We haven't done a forensic examination of the crime scenes. There are how many murders? I don't know. There's like hundreds of murders.
Yeah, we're not talking about one or two.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, every one of those needs to be developed. And if I went into court and had a prosecutor, like was shown in that show, trying to throw her weight around, it would be as simple as, go ahead and grant her speedy trial. I'll be going up to the appellate court. Y'all will be reversed, and I will get my time. You're not going to tell me that I can't have more than 2 weeks to go to trial. And that was one of the frustrating things for me. It was not the most, but just as a starting point,
sure,
it doesn't happen that fast. Now, they could be pushing for a fast trial, but a fast trial in a case like this would be like in a year.
Right. Let me ask you this too, because it seems like maybe this ties into the defense, but their defense essentially just boils down to, well, look, he was a Marine.
Yep.
He's only taking out bad guys.
Right.
And he's really sad. He's a really sad boy.
Yeah, he really is.
Is that even like a defense at that point? That doesn't seem like a defense. That seems like a closing argument for a better sentencing.
It does. And the one aspect that did ring true was the conversations that they had with Frank about him being potentially mentally unstable. And him saying, oh, you're going to call me, crazy. I'm not crazy. I did this on purpose. I'm not going to agree that you make me crazy. That's disrespectful to everyone else. I'm not going to let you say that I have PTSD because that's disrespectful to all of my Marine brothers who actually have PTSD. I knew what I was doing and I did this. Those real conversations, that was a really good, solid legal analysis. And I've had conversations with clients on mental health options on cases where they've said, no, I'm not comfortable doing that. It's disrespectful to other people. I knew what I was doing. I've definitely had that conversation with clients. So that part of it did ring true to me.
But it just seems like a lot of times, like the prosecutors, they're bringing in ballistics and all these other things. And the defense is like, but don't you feel bad for him? You know, like there was no volleying, it seemed like.
Yeah,
you know?
The only thing that they were really relying on in the case was sympathy.
Right.
You know, because there was half of the audience. And by the way, a judge would never allow the audience to come in with signs and cheer and all of those things as well. That's completely unrealistic as well. But you did have a sense that there were people who believed Frank Castle was a hero. Mm-hmm. And Matt Murdock himself doesn't believe he's a hero, but he's defending him. Karen Page thinks that he's a hero, the secretary paralegal, but is unsure about all that. But their hope is that he gets the same benefit that Daredevil would have gotten for crossing the line from time to time. And then the fact that the people he killed were all the worst scumbags of the universe who had all killed people, who had all hurt people. And then there's, you know, some interesting political drama within the DA's office on top of all that.
But don't you think, like, they didn't have any experts, no forensics?
See that there needs to be all of that.
Right.
And you'd have an absolute right to prepare that. And no judge would deny me the right to take the time and get the ballistics experts done on each one of the individual charges. Now, if the prosecutor had just filed one big charge, like one charge of murder, then that would have been more manageable. But when a prosecutor overreaches like that and charges 137 charges or whatever the number was on the show, that is 137 different cases that all have to be investigated. So yeah, you'd have to come back with ballistic experts. You'd have to come back with blood splatter evidence. You'd have to come back with all of those things and why they believed it was Frank that did that, because it wasn't always clear who it was. Now, sometimes he was caught red-handed, but I mean, you had this general pattern of, we believe this is a Punisher crime. We believe that it's that. But it also wasn't always super clear. You know, it was a rooftop shooting from across the way. There weren't any eyewitnesses who could put Frank there. It was a mystery for a while who this Punisher person even was.
Would this realistically be one big trial?
Yes.
Okay.
That part of it is real.
Okay.
Because you would want, as a prosecutor, to establish this pattern. I mean, this is... we thankfully haven't really had something like this, but this is like a serial killer, but without the mystery behind each one, right? Mm-hmm. This is like multiple mass shootings. Mm-hmm. And obviously we'll be very careful on whether we choose that clip because we don't want to put, you know, that out there. But that really is the legal analysis behind it. And you would want all of that together. A defense attorney would potentially have a motion to try to separate those things out because, you know, if there's doubt as to the 57th murder, if there's 136 that you're sure about, you're probably going to convict on the 57th, you know. Right. But so a defense attorney would want that to be separate, but also a judge would absolutely grant the motion to put them all together.
So to put a cherry on top of all of this, they end up putting Frank on the stand. Yeah. And if things weren't kind of like already looking not so good for them already, I mean, now we as the audience find out that Frank wants to go to jail because Kingpin is paying him to get in there and do his Punisher thing.
Yeah.
But just looking at it from an outsider as a legal perspective, like maybe the worst client you could possibly have.
The worst client with the worst attorney cross-examining him ever. And there are times in this show where Matt Murdock does some really great legal things. And this is the worst set of legal that I've seen almost on any show, almost ever, on any movie, any TV show ever. The cross-exam. If I had a chance to put Frank Castle on the stand, the first thing that Matt Murdock, besides the fact he's wildly unprepared, hasn't worked with his client, hasn't gone over the direct examination, hasn't done any work at all other than we're just going to vamp and ask you some questions and see what's going on. And then when Frank starts clamming up, he then says permission to treat the witness hostile. Now, that is a legal thing. Mm-hmm. You know, if I called a police officer to the witness stand and the police officer was giving me a hard time, the permission to treat a witness as hostile means that I can start asking cross-examination questions. And cross-examination questions are designed to be yes or no leading questions. Well, isn't it true that you went to 5th Street that day? Well, isn't it true? On direct examination, you're not allowed to do that because you're what's called leading the witness. So permission to treat your own witness as hostile, totally appropriate, and that's something that you could do. You would never do it with your own client. You just told the jury that you can't control your client and you're going to treat the witness as hostile. And then he breaks into monologue after monologue when he's supposed to be asking questions. So much so that he inspires the crowd so much that they give him a round of applause in the middle of what's supposed to be a direct examination of a witness.
Right.
And I don't think any of you that watch the show on a regular basis has seen me get this worked up almost about anything so far on the show.
Not since Jake's hair.
Right, exactly. Since Jake. Yeah. This is worse. This is worse than Jake and his hair.
God. I didn't think anything would be worse than Freaky Friday.
And here's the thing. I love Charlie Cox. Mm-hmm. I love Matt Murdock. I love his portrayal of Matt Murdock. There's so much about this show that I think is some of the best Marvel stuff that's written. It's really, really good. This is just so infuriating to me. What you do when you have somebody like this that's on the stand is you develop their backstory.
Okay.
And you develop the fact that he was a Marine. You develop the fact that he ended up having his whole family murdered right in front of him. You develop the fact that his little girl was shot and killed right in front of him. And you work with him in advance and you say, listen, they need to understand you. And even if you end up going to prison, they need to understand you. This is our last chance for them to get an idea who you are. And instead, this jerk cross-examines him and does like a superhero vigilante speech in the middle of the courtroom. And it doesn't work. And it backfires horrendously on everyone. And Frank even knows it backfires horrendously and pulls the carpet right out from under his lawyer and outplays his lawyer. But for me, thankfully, I've never had the Punisher as a client. I've never had a mass murderer as a client. But I have had people who have served our country as clients. And I have had people who have been in combat situations and have had to clear rooms in foreign countries, with rifles and knives and guns and all of that, and clear corners and done all that. And when they got back here, when someone went to go punch them, they responded like they would when they're in a foreign territory, and they responded harshly, And I've had to explain all of those aspects for my veteran clients in the past. And so just to see the absolute lack of empathy and the total backfiring of the entire strategy. And then of course we get the fun, whimsical drama of Frank realizes that maybe there's a chance that Matt has convinced someone in the jury. And so he starts screaming at everybody and confesses to the murder in front of all the entire room. I'm glad they're all dead. I'm glad they're gone. They deserved it. I'll do it again. And yeah. I'm sorry.
Let me ask you
that probably
this.
Was volume a little too loud for you're going to have to adjust that.
Yeah, I was used to it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. In all your times as a prosecutor and all your times as a defense attorney, have you ever seen a defendant that just wants to lose and is actively working against his lawyer?
No. And what you would end up seeing at that point, if they want to lose, I mean, let's think about why, right? They don't want to go through the trial. They don't want to win at trial. Well, then why would you want your day in court? Right. You know? I mean, I definitely have a vast majority of my clients are guilty of some aspect of what they're charged with. But we don't put that in front of a jury and then hope that we lose. That's a waste of my time. That's a waste of their time. That's a waste of the court's time. So, you know, I kind of remember why Frank didn't want to just plead guilty, because that was the original deal, right? Mm-hmm. They had a deal worked out for him where it wouldn't have been too bad. And then he decides at the last minute that he wants a trial because he wants to put on this big spectacle. So, yeah, it's just I've never seen that happen. I've never seen somebody like blow up like that. I have seen people lose their cool, but it wasn't because they wanted to lose the case. It was because I cross-examined them effectively and they lost their cool and they showed their true colors in front of a jury.
Sure.
I mean, that has definitely happened, but not intentionally sabotaging themselves like that.
Well, eventually Frank does go to prison.
Yes.
Eventually Frank gets out of prison.
Yes.
He escapes.
Fairly quickly.
He gets his own Netflix series and eventually gets his own special that just came out on Disney Plus. Yes. And that leads us to where he is now, still an outlaw, but still the Punisher. And he's going to be tangling with Spidey and Hulk. And I don't know, the plot of Spider-Man Brand New Day, they've done a good job of keeping it fairly under wraps.
Yeah, and I'm glad for that, honestly. I don't understand how you put these three characters together in a show. And I think what I'm looking forward to seeing is a different relationship between Peter Parker and Frank Castle than we saw with Matt Murdock and Frank Castle. And you know, Punisher has been back in Brand New Day, and kind of where he is right now as a character is kind of in flux, and how much hero and how much villain he's got, and all of those sorts of things. So I don't know if I'm going to buy Punisher being Spidey's sidekick. You know,
we don't know that that's the dynamic either.
Yeah, like he could be the big bad in the whole thing.
I mean, they've been posturing Hulk as like a big bad in this whole thing, which, you know, this like I said, this movie kind of is going to be very interesting. And as much as I love seeing you get worked up about terrible trials, half the time you were talking, I was just thinking of courtroom movies that I was like, oh God, I need to hear your take on like A Few Good Men, Liar, Liar, you know?
Yeah. There's some of them that resonate with me and that I really like. And then most of them are garbage. and a lot of them, it's hard for me to even watch anymore. Like, everyone was telling me for a long time, like, you really need to watch Lincoln Lawyer on Netflix because you'll like it. And anytime anybody tells me that, I'm like, no, I'm not going to watch it. That's why I haven't watched a single episode of Suits. Yeah. I don't buy the premise and I don't like it. Lincoln Lawyer ended up being really good. So it's possible to actually do a real, genuine, truthful portrayal of a criminal defense attorney, which is Matt Murdock's character. It's his alter. It is who Matt Murdock is, right. And he is a lawyer who cares about the people, who cares about justice, who fights for the little guy. I mean, he is a really good person and a good lawyer for all of this. And this is just, you know, the Elektra subplot that kind of goes over, and she's trying to pull him away, and this part of this was the worst part of the Daredevil series, and I enjoyed the Frank Castle Matt Murdock conversations that happened on the rooftop. You know, the questions of the bigger picture of vigilante justice, and are you going far enough? And, you know, Frank Castle challenging Daredevil, you do a half-assed job. You know, you don't put them in the ground, and so they come back, and everything that they do is on you. That's an interesting philosophical question for a vigilante. So there is at least that.
You know, maybe not the best debut for the MCU Punisher, but we get to see his big screen debut with Spider-Man Brand New Day, which is coming out in just about a week from the airing of this. We will actually be back the Monday after Spider-Man Brand New Day opens We only do this. We did for Superman, maybe one other movie. I can't remember.
I think just Superman.
Just Superman, where we watch it, and over the weekend we record an episode. So we will be talking the legal aspects of Frank, Hulk, Peter, wherever they are in Spider-Man Brand New Day on next week's episode. So next Monday, go see Spider-Man Brand New Day in theaters, and then come back on Monday, and we'll give you, while everyone else is talking about Easter eggs and blah, 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 we'll talk about the real good stuff.
Yeah, the legal analysis.
We'll talk about the legal analysis.
We're going to ruin it for you.
Oh, yeah. I love it. If you want to check out more of all of our Marvel things that we talked about, X-Men, Guardians of the Galaxy, it's all right here on the Doug Defends channel. If you want to listen to us, Spotify, Apple, and remember, we will be back next Monday, Spider-Man Brand New Day. It's going to be a brand new day right here on Doug Defends.
And any scumbag, any lowlife, any maggot piece of shit that I put down, I did it because I liked it. Hell, I loved it.